Good afternoon. This is Cathy Graham with Payentry. It's probably good morning in some of your areas, but I wanted to greet you today and welcome you to our semi-monthly webinar on an HR topic of choice. I'm Cathy Graham, and I am the VP of HR Services here at Payentry. It's a new position for us and one that we hope you will take advantage of. I'm available for any HR questions that you have. And if you want to call me at any time, my number's there on the screen, or you can shoot me an email. But today we're going to talk about something that I know you probably think has been around for way too long, and that is workplace harassment. It is something that comes up on an almost daily basis in the news. Someone has harassed someone else, and most of the time it's sexual harassment, but today we're going to talk about some other types of harassment that can occur. If you have any problems hearing me or you have a question while we're going through this, please go ahead and type a chat, go in the chat box and type a question, and we will answer questions at the end. But today we're going to talk about the following things. We're going to define what is workplace harassment. We're going to talk about why in the world do we care? We're tired of hearing about it. Why should we care about it? The types of harassment. Who can be a harasser? Can be more than just another employee. We're going to talk about policies and procedures, establishing those boundaries, and then training for awareness. And then what happens if someone complains? What do you do? And then taking a look at how that impacts and what you should do when it does have an impact on your company culture. So let's get started and talk about what it is. Well, according to the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, it's called the EEOC, it's unwelcome verbal or physical conduct that's based on race, color, religion, sex, and that includes pregnancy, national origin, age, but only if they're 40 years older or older, disability, or genetic information. So that's their definition of it. And why do we care? Well, it's illegal. That's the big thing. It has an impact on other things also, but first of all, it's illegal and it can be very expensive. It's illegal because it violates Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, the Age Discrimination in Employment Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act. It could be one or more of those that it violates. And if you're in a state that has its own laws, we're not going to talk about state laws today, but I'll be happy to help you with that if you get in touch with me afterwards. But there are various state laws now, like California, that have very strict rules and training expectations and all of that. The other reason we should care is that in 2018, the EEOC filed 66 harassment lawsuits against employers, more than a 50% increase over the year before. So that's one of the reasons we stand a chance as employers of having a lawsuit filed against us more than ever before. And then also it's expensive. They recovered almost $70 million for the victims of harassment in 2018, up from $47.5 million in 2017. So it looks like it's almost a third more. So it can be a very expensive process for an employer to defend. And that's just the $70 million is just what they recovered in penalties, and does not count attorney fees that you would incur. So it's important that even if you're a small employer to pay attention to these rules. Another reason we should care is that it does damage your organization's culture and values for those people who are working for you. It could impact more than just the people that are involved in the situation. How you handle it is very important, and to the culture of your organization, and you send a great message, bad or good, when you have one of these situations occur and you don't handle it properly. It also, from an outside perspective, the glass doors of the world and all the other information that's out there on social media now, it affects applicants' view of the company, and it can. If they see that that's been a problem within your organization, it may not be a place they want to work. And it does impact the productivity, and it impacts the engagement of your group. It impacts your bottom line, not just from a penalty and a lawyer fee perspective, but productivity in the workplace. It's very important to have everyone on the same page. So let's talk about the types of harassment. The first one, and this is the one we always think of, is the sexual harassment, because it is the most common. This is where most of the lawsuits occur, but it can be other things also, which we're going to talk about. We all know about the hashtag #MeToo movement and how impactful that's been over the last several years. And that's probably one of the reasons we're tired of hearing of it, because it's in the news constantly. But there are two types of sexual harassment. The first one is quid pro quo. That means this for that. And it does have a definition of conditioning terms of employment on sexual requests, or it can be a hostile work environment type harassment. That's where an environment is so negative that it impacts the employee's ability to work or other employees' ability to do business. Sexual harassment is unwanted sexual behavior. It can be verbal or physical. Knowing that's the most common, let's talk a little bit about the one that's less common, and that's discriminatory harassment. That's where offensive comments or behavior target a person's, not their sex always, but a person's race, their age, their disability, their genetic information. It can be an ethnic issue, or it could be potentially a disability that people joke about. Offensive comments or behavior can be jokes. It can be slurs, stereotyping in a negative way, or it can also be hostile, threatening, intimidating, including the jokes or the pranks that might be demeaning. So hopefully you don't have any of that going on in your workplace, but things have changed a lot. I've been around for a while, and grew up in an environment that was pretty open to things like this, and no one over the last 40 years, it's just become an issue now in the last probably 5 to 10 years, where people are standing up against this type of behavior in the workplace. So, but it was much more common when I first started working, and it does still occur in many workplaces. Now, don't we wish people would just come to work and do their job and play nice together and treat other with respect? But it doesn't always happen that way. When you put a bunch of people in one environment, some of them don't behave as they should behave. In the types of harassment and under discriminatory harassment, it can also be something that somebody has posted in their cubicle. It could be written or graphic material, so it doesn't have to be verbal. It could, but it kind of puts down an individual because of race, color, religion, gender, national origin, age, or disability. It can be a posting. It's not something you posted, because as an employer you wouldn't do that, but it could be something somebody has out on the shop floor, or it could be something that they have posted in their cubicle, or pinned to the refrigerator in the lunchroom. So those are things you have to be very careful with. Obviously, you wouldn't allow these things to be displayed on your bulletin boards or circulated in the workplace if you know about them. So it's good to pay attention to those kinds of things. Have somebody out there bird dogging that to make sure that it's not happening. So who could be a harasser? Well, it's any person that has a relationship with the company, to your company. That could be another employee. It could be a supervisor, manager, might even be the CEO of your company. That's not fun to deal with. Um, it could be a customer of yours or a client of yours that is on premises off and on. It could be a vendor. Actually, I have been sexually harassed by a vendor before when I was very young, but so I know that that can happen. And it can be a contractor, one of your independent contractors that comes in for meetings periodically or comes to your workplace to do a job, but they are not an employee, but they still have a relationship to the company. So how do you start with your policies and procedures? How do you establish those boundaries for employees and all the others? You really, really have to start at the top. You have to make sure that your leadership is invested in the process wholly, that they're not going to undermine it or make jokes about it, or that they are fully on board with this before you do anything. And it's good to have them show some type of support to all the employees about what your policy and procedures are. So they need to draft something that supports the plan that you have to all employees. It also should be distributed to anyone else that has contact with the company. You need to develop a written, can't be just verbal, but a written zero tolerance policy for harassment at work. We have samples of those here. If you need something, let me know with an email and I will send you what I have. Also, in that policy, you need to define what you consider to be harassment, because some people may not know that it includes certain people that are disabled or people that have limitations. So all of that. You also need to include a statement that prohibits it in the workplace and outline your complaint procedure. Describe what disciplinary measures could be involved if someone is found to be guilty of this, and include a statement of protection against retaliation for anyone who files a claim. Give employees an option or various options for reporting a complaint. Obviously, they know that they can complain to their direct supervisor or to HR, but give them the opportunity to complain to senior management if their direct supervisor or someone in HR is the one that is harassing them. Communicate your policy to everyone, your employees, your contractors, and your vendors. And one thing I missed on here is your clients or your customers. Make sure that they know what your policy is. You find a vendor that's harassing one of your employees, and they could lose the contract that they have with you. The independent contractor could lose their contract with you. So just make sure that you communicate your policy and take a stand with everyone that is involved. Training for awareness is mandatory, should be mandatory for all employees. In certain states, it is mandatory. California has a mandatory requirement now. New York does. I believe there might be one other city or a couple of them pending. So you do need to pay attention to your state laws. Remember, I can help you with that if you need it. But it needs to be mandatory. You don't want anyone to be left out. Even the CEO should sit in on it. It shows support for your plan or your program. Conduct the training 1 or 2 times a year. You want to run your new hires through it within the first 90 days of their employment. And training should include what constitutes unacceptable behavior in the workplace, how to recognize harassment, the steps to report inappropriate behavior, And then again, on training for awareness, your managers should have specialized training because they need different skills than someone who is just filing a complaint. They need to know how to recognize harassment and how to respond to a complaint. What are the steps that they take to do that? So they need to know how to handle these things. And you also should add handling of these issues to their performance management process, like their appraisals, so that there is accountability on their ability to handle the complaints that may arise. Handling complaints can be awkward. Um, for the person that's complaining and for you, because you're going to go through a process that might have to ask some, and you may have to ask some tough questions, but establish an effective complaint procedure. One of the things I meant to mention when we were talking about giving them options for reporting complaints, some companies have an outside third party, kind of like an ethics hotline, that an employee could call and complain if they wanted to. Not anonymously, but they would have to, go through the process. Once you establish this complaint procedure and you have communicated it to your employees, quickly investigate any claim. Don't negatively impact the person filing a complaint by treating them differently or, having them probably go home and not do their job. Just try not to negatively impact them in any way in the workforce. You want people to feel comfortable filing a complaint, so you don't want it to be a negative process. But do whatever is necessary to stop the harassment immediately. And that depends on what the situation is and how close to home it is. If it's an employee on employee or supervisor with an employee, there are different ways to handle that. After the process of investigation, you're going to discipline the person who committed the harassment if it's appropriate, if it indeed did occur and was significant enough to do that. And you're going to document your investigation and the steps that you've taken to remedy the problem. During the process, make sure you take every complaint seriously and investigate every one that comes forward. Try not to make credibility judgments based on the reputation of the person being accused. I know when Bill Cosby first was charged with this is outside the workplace, but it was like, not Bill Cosby. He's everybody's dad. He could never do anything wrong. So within your workplace, you have people that that have created a reputation for themselves, and they may have another side to them that you haven't seen. So don't base your judgments on the person's reputation or even where they stand. If it's your best salesperson, your highest person on the chain of command, you still have to investigate these things. Remain objective and don't leave the two parties to work it out. That is the worst thing that you could do because they're already not working it out. And someone would end up getting hurt or negatively impacted. So also when you're investigating, if you need a checklist for investigating a harassment complaint, I also have a checklist that I can send you if you want to email me after the presentation. So after you've done the investigation, you've disciplined the person or not, because maybe there's not a reason to discipline. Maybe it was a misunderstanding. Revisit your company culture. See if you need to make any changes. First of all, what do you want your culture to look like? You may already have a mission statement or a values statement, and what you need to do is look at that value statement and your current culture and see if you need to make any changes. Do you need to reinforce certain types of behavior with different types of training or new policies, or just somehow in your workplace change what's happening? Find ways to constantly reinforce your core values. That's one way that you'll be able to make sure that these things don't happen as frequently as they would if you're not doing that. And hire people that fit your culture. That's very important. If you hire someone that is not a fit, there may be a problem with not just harassment, but other things in your environment that could create turnover. Always emphasize trust and respect in the workplace. If you don't have a workplace that has that now, I'm sure you have other problems that you're dealing with, because those two things are very, very important for people to be able to feel like they come to work and are appreciated for what they do. It encourages engagement at all levels. So, do any of you have any questions? If you want, you can type them in the chat box. I know that our webinars are short and sweet, and I just want to make sure that everyone has a chance to ask any questions that they might have based on your current environment or any situations that you have. You can also do that after this session is over by mail. By email. It looks like we don't have any questions, so I am going to say good afternoon or good morning again to you guys on the West Coast or in other time zones. But if you do have any questions or you need help with this or any other type of situation in your workforce, it can be your exempt, non-exempt questions. It can be job descriptions. It can be anything. Give me a call or shoot me an email. And this is included in your Payentry, well, your contract, I guess you would say. That's part of our service, and it is a new service, so please take advantage of it. With that, we'll end the presentation today, and I appreciate your attendance. Thank you.